It's a new day, and that means new stories from Ocean's story. Let's begin. My husband was angry with me because I didn't want to accept his offer to go to his friend's apartment. It all started when Caden and I were deciding where to spend our Thanksgiving. We had usually done it with our family for the past few years. But due to new events, this issue became more pressing. My husband lost his job, and I'm staying home with the kids. Caden and I had to go to a house near my parents. My father often came to me or I to him to watch my son, who is 5 years old, and my daughter, who is 7 years old. They are not very young, but leaving them unattended would not be a good idea for me. Sometimes I feel like I am a big distraction to my parents' lives. Almost every day I call them to ask my mom or dad to come to me. Because I need to go somewhere or go for a walk. My dad never complained about sitting with his grandchildren, but I don't feel comfortable asking them to sit with my children every time. All these thoughts came to the point that my husband Caden said that this year it would be better for us not to bother our family and spend Thanksgiving elsewhere. I started talking to my husband about it because going to my husband's friend was not so easy either. Caden said that maybe we would not be alone there and we would not be allowed to make noise. These factors started to bother me. The worst thing about this situation is that my husband has now lost his job. All our savings are on the verge of disappearing. The best thing for our family would be if we don't start making any plans and just stay with my family for the holiday. But Caden says that's not the best idea. Then my husband said we could stay at another house for a few days because I don't want our children to be upset at the beginning of the holiday. Also, my husband says that he is not very comfortable being around my parents. It's because they help us all the time. Now Caden feels guilty and indebted to them. I tried to talk to Caden and reassure him that my parents decide to help us and we do not ask them for money. But these words do not give my husband any confidence at all. There are only a few weeks left before the holiday, and a few days ago we talked to my sister. She said that our parents are already very tired and want to relax somehow. In this way, my sister gave me a hint that my family has become a lot of a drain on my mom and dad. It hurt me to hear this, although deep down I knew it was true. And then, when I was having coffee with my dad, he repeatedly emphasized to me that he was very tired. My dad didn't tell me directly that I and my family shouldn't come to their house for Thanksgiving, but his hints were clear enough for me to draw certain conclusions. I am still hesitating in my decision about whether or not to go to my parents' house. My husband says that if I do not say yes, we will ruin the holiday for my family. I don't want to stress my own family, but I don't want to spend the family holiday in someone else's house. Caden and I almost had a fight when we sat down to discuss it again. I really need some advice from people. Kaylee, you need to define what is important to you right now, because your parents gave you a pretty straightforward phrase. We need a break from the kids. What else do you need to make a decision? It's unpleasant to hear about the problems you and your family are facing, especially given your recent job loss and financial difficulties. However, it's important to approach the decision to celebrate Thanksgiving in a positive way or you'll lose everything. Instead of putting pressure on each other, try to talk calmly and honestly about your concerns and fears with Caden. It is very clear to me that it is better to go somewhere else this year to give your parents a break from your family. Miles, you have to agree with your own husband. I don't even see any other solution for you. Think about what would happen if you decided to stay with your parents for this year. They are unlikely to tell you that your family was superfluous, but this holiday will definitely not bring them as much joy. It's understandable that your husband may feel uncomfortable relying on his parents, but it's important to recognize their willingness to help. Instead of avoiding their help, consider expressing gratitude and discussing ways to reciprocate when circumstances improve. Sophie, why did your husband come up with this idea? I think Caden has personal problems with your parents. That's why Caden is trying to convince you that you will be a burden to them. It is unlikely that natural parents will refuse to accept their children. In any case, any decision you make will be the right one, believe me. Your children need to spend Thanksgiving with their own people, not in an apartment they don't know, with people they don't know. This can cause a lot of stress for them. Next story. My son Jason goes to school now and he is 13 years old. He came to me and said that he would like to make a small meeting for his friends and kids from school because my son is not very good friends with everyone. I said it would be a good idea to start making friends with the kids. Jason got excited about the idea, and we started thinking about what we could do. First of all, Jason went to the school and invited some kids. Also, there is a guy in the neighborhood who has mobility problems. My son is not very good friends with Liam, but they sometimes meet on the street. Also, my husband knows Liam's parents and thinks it would be right to invite him. My husband Noah has started talking to Jason about inviting Liam. Eventually, my husband convinced Jason to invite Liam to his house. Noah also talked to Liam's parents and decided how my son's party would be organized. Noah thought it would be great if Liam had his own place and was not too close to the other kids. It's hard for me to imagine how Liam will feel when he sees other kids running around and jumping on the trampoline, and all he can do at that moment is just sit and watch. Don't think I'm against Liam being at my son's party. I just don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. Kids who don't have problems might pay too much attention to Liam. Maybe some of them will start to bully Liam, or Liam himself will feel special and have a nervous breakdown. This must be avoided at all costs. I don't want my son's party to become one that no one wants to remember. My son will start to associate with other children only in a negative way. Although I was very worried about it, Liam came to my son's party. All the kids were wearing normal clothes that you can get dirty or do different things in. Instead, Liam was brought by his mom in a car, and he came out in almost a classic outfit. He wore a shirt and classic pants. These are definitely not the things you should wear when you go to a party with teenagers, because they will want to play something, and the clothes will definitely get dirty. As I expected, Liam spent almost the entire party sitting in one place and pretending to enjoy being there. Almost no one wanted to talk to that guy, and when the kids were at the table, I noticed that Liam was sitting farther away from all the kids. It looked as if Liam was an outsider. A lot of kids were paying attention to Liam throughout the hours. Maybe the party wasn't that bad, but Liam definitely became a problem there. Then the children went home, and I noticed that my son was happy. However, Jason was concerned that many of his new friends were talking about Liam. He received a lot of attention at the party. I even saw that some children came to see Liam on purpose. It really upset me, and I went to my husband. I told him that the decision to name Liam was wrong, even if he was called to the party. Liam was supposed to look like everyone else, not sit in his shirt all the time. At the very least, it looked very strange. And that's why a lot of kids paid attention to Liam. My husband said I was exaggerating and there was no problem at all. I continued to give him arguments why Noah was wrong now, and we had a fight. Our conflict became known to Liam's parents because their son told them how he felt while he was in my house. His parents said that I created a bad atmosphere at the party, and that's why Liam felt bad. Wow, now absolutely everyone made me the one to blame. I feel stupid. Emma, wow, my friend, I'm so surprised that you're the one who was made to feel guilty in this case. I think most of the blame is on your husband and the parents of those kids who don't know how to behave. It's commendable that your son Jason wanted to organize a get-together to socialize with his friends and classmates. However, the decision to invite Liam, who has mobility issues, could have been made more thoughtfully. Instead of making him feel like an outsider by seating him separately, an inclusive approach could have been taken. This would allow all children to interact freely without drawing undue attention to Liam's differences. Olivia, the intention of inviting Liam to the party was undoubtedly good, but the execution of it may have unintentionally made him uncomfortable. I think you should have insisted on it. That Liam come to your house under different circumstances, or maybe you should have talked to your children before the party so they knew how to behave. The fact that your husband didn't notice any problems raises a lot of questions for me. It sounds like Noah saw exactly what he wanted at the party. That's great, so I did a great job. That's probably what Noah thought when he was watching your son's party. Eva, while it is important to promote inclusivity and accommodate diverse needs, it is equally important to be mindful of how such events can affect the individual who participates. Liam's parents rightly expressed concern about the atmosphere at the party and indicated that the planning and execution of the event could have been improved because you are partly trying to justify your own vision and actions at the party. I understand that you were very concerned about your son, but maybe Liam got a lot of stress at the party and said something strange to his parents. It's not very nice to be made the biggest problem in this situation. My next story. My children are now quite old and I live exclusively with my wife, Josephine. Sometimes we get together as a family and spend time together. This is one of the warmest moments in my life. This year, my wife and I decided to organize a family gathering at our house. We have plenty of space outside to grill vegetables and meat. I also built a beautiful gazebo at my place 3 years ago. My wife and I love to cook different dishes when we invite our guests. We have never spared any time or money for our family days. I also taught this principle to my children, of whom I have 2. They are my son Jameson and my daughter Emery. They already have families and not even big kids. My daughter Emery married Leonardo a long time ago, but from the very beginning I didn't really like him. Leonardo is not a bad man, but something about him still bothers me to this day. Leonardo has worked at different jobs all his life and has a lot of experience in everything. The time came when Josephine and I started to think about the current date for our family. My daughter also wrote to me that her husband would be free and could help me set up the house or yard before most of the guests arrived. I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea because I could use the help. Leonardo came and started helping me. The problem was that Leonardo started to improvise and did everything backwards. It annoyed me a lot. He was putting the chairs that I had had by the table all my life, but Leonardo decided that it would be better to put them in the background. I had to do all the work for myself and my son-in-law. He would do something different and I would say it was wrong. In the end, I told Leonardo not to interfere and just sit. He was not happy about that and we started to fight a bit about it. My wife stopped us and we stopped throwing words at each other. Leonardo went home and told his wife about the situation. Then my daughter texted me that I was being an asshole. Leonardo wanted to help me and do something good, and I started yelling at him and telling him that he was doing everything wrong. The next days I had to apologize to Leonardo for my behavior. We seemed to have solved everything and our holiday was not postponed. Josephine and I decided on a date when all my family would come. My daughter wrote that the date I had chosen was not suitable for her and Leonardo. However, the situation is such that either we do a family meeting next week or we have to cancel everything and plan a meeting for the next 6 months. I started to get nervous about it because it was quite difficult to make any decision. I thought about it and wrote to my daughter, "Emery, if you and Leonardo can't come now, then you will have to wait for the next meeting. I can't postpone the whole celebration just because of you two." My daughter answered pretty quickly and started to say that I had made a very inconvenient decision. She decided that I wanted to take revenge on Leonardo, so I chose dates that would not be convenient for them. Although it wasn't really true, I had some things to do. That required a lot of time and I only had those dates free. My daughter did not do anything. Emery came up with an interesting plan. She sent a letter to everyone saying, "The family holiday will be at my house." She also indicated the dates that were favorable for her and Leonardo. And now our situation was such that the meeting I initiated was snatched away from me by my own daughter. I was not pleased that my favorite holiday would no longer be available to me. I wrote to my daughter to cancel everything and not to spoil my life. Emery was very harsh and said she would not listen to me. For her, it became a matter of revenge for my sacrifice. Several days of my persuasion did not help. I even asked my son Jameson to talk to his sister about it, but he said, "I didn't want to get involved and deal with such serious issues." My wife is angry with me for causing such a complication in the relationship. With my daughter and her husband Leonardo, Josephine wants me to resolve everything while it is still possible. But I don't know what to do anymore. My daughter does not want to talk about it and says she has made her choice, just as I have made mine. Bryson, it's understandable that you might have felt frustrated while preparing for the family reunion. Instead of telling Leonardo to sit back and not interfere, consider finding ways to work together in a more harmonious way, recognizing his efforts while making sure the celebration reflects your vision. The conflict with Leonardo during the preparation for the family holiday was undoubtedly difficult. However, you definitely didn't need to be too harsh with him. Your main problem is not that you like certain habits. It's that you don't know how to communicate well with people. I'm pretty sure that when you were talking to Leonardo, you didn't choose your words very well because only your wife was able to stop what was happening there. It's like you're a grown man and you behaved worse than a child. Yulia, your decision to choose a date for the family meeting without taking into account the presence of your daughter and son-in-law complicated the situation. It can be helpful to involve all family members in the decision-making process to avoid misunderstandings and ensure that everyone's schedules are aligned. This approach promotes unity and reduces the risk of conflicts like the one you experienced. Your daughter's decision to change the dates of the family gatherings was fair enough, because you really started to turn a family night into a plan for personal revenge. I think in this story, the author wanted to make himself the victim. But the reality is that you behaved like an asshole, and now you're asking other people for advice. The only advice I have for you is to stop being such an asshole. If you don't, you will definitely confirm your status as an idiot. Now I want to tell a different story. My wife Delilah and I have 2 children. The oldest of them is my son Axel, who is now 16 years old. This winter, my son will be 17 years old. He is now one step closer to adulthood. I also have a daughter who is only 5 years old. This year, I decided to divorce Delilah for very simple reasons. She lost all feelings for me and started to date other guys openly. I could not tolerate this behavior and filed for divorce. Delilah said she didn't mind being with me, but she didn't want to limit her life to being married to me. I said, "How do you imagine that? Today, you are with me and our children, and 2 days later you go to some other guy. We will not do that. If you don't like me anymore, please go away." Well, my wife listened to me and agreed to the divorce. My son didn't know about the specific reasons why I divorced Delilah. I didn't want to tell him the truth about his mother's actions. My son was quite calm for a while, but as time went on, his attitude towards me began to change. Axel started saying that I deliberately made my wife leave. My son started saying that I was the only one to blame for Delilah leaving us. I didn't try to make sure that Delilah had no more contact with my children. We had an agreement that we would have joint custody of the children. I wanted Delilah not to spoil our children. I thought it would be difficult with my little daughter, because it would not be very easy for her to understand the reasons for my divorce from Delilah. But the reality was that my son almost started to hate me. Axel started avoiding me at every opportunity. When I drive him to school, Axel is silent. I try to talk to him. Axel acts as if he is mute. One day, I went to his room and just sat there in silence. It started to annoy my son. Axel started telling me to leave his room and not to violate his personal boundaries. I kept sitting there and did not respond to his words. Axel could not stand it and started yelling at me. If you behaved more shyly and didn't look at other women, then my mom was next to me. Our family started to fall apart because of you, Dad. I had everything I wanted, but now it's not like that. I hate you, Dad, and I don't want to talk to you anymore. So get out of my room right now. I was very surprised by what my son was saying at that moment. I was speechless and went to my room in silence. All I could think about was where my son had gotten this idea. The only thing I realized was right for me was to go to Delilah. I arrived and talked to her a little about the situation. Delilah acted like she was very surprised and didn't know why Axel had started talking like that. To put it bluntly, my ex-wife told me that she did not put such thoughts in Axel's head. I returned home with no answers. I knew that it was unlikely that my ex was telling the truth, but I decided to wait a bit to find out more. The next few days, I tried to talk to my son somehow. Axel continued to play with me and barely answered me. Axel didn't tell me any important information. He didn't ask for anything for the last week. It started to bother me a lot. It was like my son was trying to cut me out of his life. One day, I was next to Axel again and started asking him questions. He said, "Stop talking to me. I already told you that I don't want to have any contact with you right now. You are a terrible father who only thinks about himself." I went to my room and wrote to Delilah. "What did you even say to my son while he was at your place?" Delilah wrote back, "We talked about school and his classes. Nothing special, really." I stopped writing to my ex and let her go. Then the next day, I was with cleaning my kid's room. Axel hadn't turned off his laptop and there was an open page with mail. I couldn't resist and looked at the latest messages. The first 2 messages were about school, so I skipped them. But the next one was from a familiar mailbox. The letter said, "Don't worry, he won't be a problem for you soon." I started to read further and saw that Axel was complaining to my ex about what a shit he thought I was. Delilah wrote that she was very sorry for what I was doing to him. I was in a space cheek when I read that. I didn't have to wait any longer to find out the truth. When my son came home from the store, I went to his room and started a conversation. Axel tried to kick me out of the room again, but when I said, "We need to talk about your mother," Axel let me in and started listening to everything I said. I had to tell him that Delilah was the reason for the divorce. I told him everything about Delilah and her meetings with different guys. My son was very surprised when he heard the story that Delilah wanted to live with me for a couple of days and then be with a new guy for the next few days. My son stopped being angry with me and we reconciled. I called Delilah and told her, "Your dirty story has tainted you." I hung up and didn't say anything else to her. Delilah did not understand what I was talking about. Then Axel told his mom on his own that he knew the truth about her. My son now began to ignore his own mother and condemned her actions. At the moment, I was happy that my problem was finally solved, but another problem replaced it. Delilah was complaining to her mother about me and the fact that I had allegedly deceived my son and lied to Axel about her. Delilah's mother made a fuss and passed the lie off as the truth. Now some people are judging me and saying that I am a rare shit. Delilah started threatening to go to court. I found myself in the center of strange events again. How can I prove to everyone that I did not cause the fight? Ariana, I am shocked by this story. Your ex-wife is a total ass. It's understandable that you were hurt by your ex-wife's actions, but it's very important to consider the consequences of sharing these details with your son. Axel is having a difficult time with the divorce, and open communication with him should have been a priority from the beginning. Instead of letting things escalate, you could have told him a little more about his own mother. Identifying your son's negative feelings toward you is undoubtedly difficult, but it is important to address the underlying issues in a calm and open manner, because while you've been waiting for it and thinking that this is the perfect opportunity to talk to your son, your ex-wife started talking to your son. She said all the information that was favorable to her. Everett, while your frustration with Delilah's actions is understandable, revealing details to your son without proper preparation could backfire. In the future, focus on rebuilding trust with Axel. Apologize for any unintended pain caused by the way you handled the situation. Emphasize your love for him and your commitment to being a supportive parent, because during this time, you haven't talked to him yet. Your wife has had a lot of bad things to say to Axel about you. I hate it when one of the parents starts doing something mean. Delilah must have been very angry with you and decided to take revenge. Next story. My children are now living separately, but for this month, my son William came to live with me and my wife for the whole month. My son works mostly on his phone or laptop. He is also studying remotely at college. Part of his work is studying. William made a small shop on the internet and has some profit. It helps me a lot to save money and spend it on more urgent needs. Since most of the day William is in his room, I often ask him to help me with something. My car was damaged recently and I asked William to go to the store and buy some parts. My knees hurt a lot and I didn't want to take any more risks. So I started asking William to go to the store, which was about 300 meters away. My son started to say that he had a lot of orders and he couldn't take time away from his important work. William said he could only go to the store in 2 days, when he had to go to college to take some classes. I told him that it was preferable for me to buy the parts as soon as possible, because my financial situation depends on my car working. However, my son was not affected by these words. It really started to upset me. As a result, I had to go to the store that day. I was very annoyed that I was the one who had to go to the store. When I got home, I saw William sitting on the couch, eating chips and watching YouTube. I started yelling at him and told him he was being an asshole because he made his sick dad go to the store while he was just eating chips and watching videos. William said that at that moment he did not have time to go to the store, and now it's lunchtime so he can eat in peace. My son also said, I have some customers to talk to, so I went to my room. The next week, the situation was a little different, but similar in its meaning. William had to help his mother bring in some heavy things from her uncle. However, when the day came when they were supposed to leave, William started to say at the last minute, "Mom, I have so much to do right now. Maybe you can do everything yourself. I'll order you a taxi and you won't bother me." My wife said that was not a good idea because the things I had to bring home were very heavy. My wife could not physically carry those things from the house to the taxi. William started to say that he didn't want to do it because he didn't have time for that, and he had more important things to do. My wife called me. I had to leave work and help her. When I arrived, I yelled at my son for his irresponsible behavior. I had a big fight with William. My son said he didn't want to be in a house where everyone was telling him what to do anymore. William went to his room and said that he was packing his things and planning to go to his apartment. I got emotional and started saying that I would be happy if William would leave and not behave like a jerk in my house. William left and now has no desire to talk to anyone. It seems to me that William has blocked my number and all social networks. I admit that I was partly wrong, but this does not give my son the right to behave the way he wants. If you're in my house, you have to help me in some way. My wife says we shouldn't try to talk to William right now, but I realize that our relationship is on the verge of destruction. James, your son behaved like shit, and that's the truth. You and your wife shouldn't be bowing down to your son. William does not respect you and thinks he is the president and should do what he wants. It's very disappointing to hear about the communication and understanding gap between you and your son William. While he may be busy with his online business and studies, there needs to be a balance of responsibilities, especially when you live together as a family. His refusal to help with urgent tasks such as buying car parts or helping his mother with the shows that he is not considering the challenges you both face. It is very important to set clear expectations and boundaries for each of you regarding your contribution to the household. Isabella, it is understandable that you expect a certain level of cooperation from your son given the circumstances. However, the situation has escalated to the point where William has decided to leave suddenly. It might be helpful to start a conversation when emotions have cooled down, to discuss each other's needs and find a middle ground that respects everyone's priorities. Because in this situation, there's more to the story than just what your son did wrong, because you, as a father, started to give a bad reaction to all the events. I think if you hadn't started showing your selfish face, everything would have been different.